I will, go, when he finds the twist in Don't Worry, Darling, ingenious. I feel like the twists and turns in Olivia Wilde's life are more ingenious than what's going on in that movie, okay? Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III. I'm a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Fertel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
Let's get into it. And we are back with our 250th episode of Keep It.
Oh my God. We're now getting to, when you spin the wheel on Wheel of Fortune, the amounts you can spin. Actually, now it's, I think, 500's lowest, but you used to be able to spin 250. Anyway, that's how big we are.
In the days when America hadn't printed enough money.
That's right. Correct. Wow. Yeah. Your salon.com essay right here. Okay.
The Wheel of Fortune as a metaphor for American capitalism.
Yes. You do not want Pat Sajak to weigh in. I guarantee it.
I forgot that he's crazy now.
It really is unfortunate because he's so down the line. I would say hilarious on Wheel of Fortune. And then you see a picture of him with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it's like, I don't know another Republican who's that like on the level funny on one hand, like for real and like smooth, and then seemingly demented otherwise. It's like Dennis Miller. You can kind of see the dementedness anyway.
I would say that, we're never shocked when we find out that like those Republicans or, conservative types they really want it to work in like the industry.
Yes,
and
right.
It didn't happen,
like
so
Kellyanne Conway. Yes, right.
Her famous stand-up. And I truly feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, she's probably like watching like Pat Sajak being like, she wanted to be Vanna.
Oh God! Well, you just said something bone chilling. I absolutely cannot even consider that reality, and you've said something very triggering to me. So,
I'm imagining an All About Eve with Vanna White and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
By the way, there already is an All About Eve with Vanna White because Pat Sajak's daughter Maggie Sajak is their social correspondent, and she is always wearing an evening gown and lingering behind the letterboard. You can go on her socials and she gives you the inside scoop on certain episodes. Vanna, you got to watch your back.
I can't. I was gonna start this by saying I've said and we're back 250 times, but I haven't done 250 total episods of the show.
Oh, that's true. So yeah, this is actually an uneventful episode altogether. Yeah. But
I love the I'm imagining like the Keep It Wikipedia, like a sitcom Wikipedia, where it has like Ira Madison, like Louis Fertel, like it has like the number of episodes we were each on.
Right. I wonder if I'm more than you then. I guess I am.
You are. I think you're like 248 or 249. You rarely miss an episode.
No, it's sort of like ER where you realize like, I don't know who you would be on ER, Anthony Edwards. And then I'm the Noah Wiley who is secretly there way more.
And speaking of sitcoms, we have the fantastic Paul Reiser on our episode this week,
and he's as rad as you would expect. I just want to say, so we taped his segment before this. He does get one thing wrong that I didn't want to correct him about. He says that Alan Arkin was nominated for Wait Until Dark. He was not. He was nominated for The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, which he did get right, and also The Heart Is a Lonely Hunter, which is so boring I can't sit through it. Go ahead.
You're not a Carson McCullers fan?
Not these days, no. Actually, wait, Carson McCullers is the member of The Wedding, right? Julie Harris, 1952. That's a good performance.
Yeah. I literally have The Heart Is a Lonely Hunter sitting on my kitchen table. Because I got it to read it. I got it to read it for the first time because a friend of mine, I think we were talking about Truman Capote, and then he was like, and like Carson McCullers and their relationship, and he was like, well, you've never read Carson though, so you should read Heart Is a Lonely Hunter and Member of the Wedding. So I bought both.
Oh, okay. Well, report back when we can get into our Southern Gothic offshoot. Keep it. Yeah.
I'll do a Sugar Baker monologue. It'll be great.
Oh, great. Oh, good. That's what the kids like. I love how that's like a modern reference for us. Delta Burke, we're up to date.
Speaking of reporting back, I need to let you know that I experienced one of the most insane things of my life this weekend.
Which was?
And that is BravoCon.
Yeah, the reports back, it was giving Altamont. I was worried. I was like, this might be the end of Ira's life. Yeah.
So it was a 3-day convention for Bravo, the network.
Yes.
Which is
correct.
I don't think there's been anything like this since like going to see WWE, like a convention dedicated to like an entire network. Seems weird. Like where was TGIF Con when we were kids?
Right. Though I feel like those people like that maybe did things like mall tours, but it was never as organized as this. Never as like we're packed in this fucking room and it's like the LuLaRoe pants of conventions where like superstars show up.
But I feel like the WWE thing is apt because, we watch Real Housewives and these things on Bravo. And obviously, it's reality TV and they're playing themselves, but they're also playing a role with one another, and self-producing and, doing storylines, etc. It is another level seeing them do reunions after, they film the season where they're able to comment on like how people watch the season and like storylines that came up, etc. But it's another thing to watch that happening on a stage with a live audience, cheering, booing, chanting like their favorite quotes. Like it truly felt like a wrestling match. Like people turning
Jerry
into
Springer.
Yeah, people turning into heels and faces like before your very eyes. And it was so surreal. It was very surreal to watch.
Were the women of those shows prepared for that? Do you think they knew it would be that octane?
They were. I think that they feed off of it too. I do. One of the funniest things is like, you will be walking through the convention center and like the regular convention center is just like, it's set up with just like booths and things. Because let me tell you, if you're on Bravo, you're selling something.
Right.
Whether it's whether it's face wash or a wine or just merch with like one of your catch quotes on it. So everyone has a booth. And, like the funny part is the varying differences in quality. Like She by Sheree is giving Sheen by Sheree. But then there are some people who are like, these products are good. That's always shocking. But one of the weirdest things is like you'll be in the convention center and obviously like the housewives and people like have to get from like panel to panel or, like they're going to their booth and they're like being flanked by security depending on how big they are. Just random points throughout the day, you'll hear screams of elation. And you look over and it's like, you would expect to see like the fucking Beatles, like being like ushered through. Like it's Beyonce, people are screaming and you look and it's like Countess Luann.
Again, I've invoked this quote before. Grace Helbig, former YouTuber, saying the definition of talent is changing. And when people are screaming for Countess Luann, it's just so funny. It's like, I get that she's an institution at this point. I just remember when she debuted on this show and she was sort of the most obviously pretentious of them, like, oh, who cares, etc. And now she's been there so long. It's like the grande dame of the show.
Yeah. And there was the grande dame herself, Karen Huger from Real Housewives of Potomac. And, when I call them my favorite franchise, I think they're, having seen years of these other Bravo women like morph through to what they need to become. They're the show that's most adept at like adapting and like being like they're having real fun when they argue with each other. Like some of the other women, like they truly do hate each other and that like they cut, those fights are deep. But the Potomac cast is more so like wrestling where like they'll battle with each other, but they're like on the panel they were specifically being like, but we're good now. But like we know what we have to do for the show.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I guess DragCon would be kind of similar.
Yeah,
you know,
like that. Speaking of the concept of talent changing, Louis, I wish you'd been there with me because let me tell you something. I felt like Sally Field in the mall in Soap Dish. The amount,
people
the
knew
crossover.
Yeah.
Well, because like there's a big percentage of Keep It fans who are also Bravo fans, and I was stopped constantly. Louis, our fans are lovely, but the fact that they are like could spot me through like a crowd of people, and they're like, "That's Ira," and
I
they
have to
come
say,
up to me.
the times I get recognized from the podcast, it's super flattering because, of course, you can't see a podcast. So it means they've done the homework to look up who we are. Anyway, I think it's maybe the most ideal way to be quote unquote recognized. Mm-hmm. You know, people just they know who you are. They've done the homework, and they come up to me and they bring up like, "Hey, I'm a big fan of Tuesday Weld too," or some actress. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is that they would they'd ask about you, of course, but then they'd ask about specific topics that we talk about. But I also forget that it's not just listeners, because now that we have YouTube and Snapchat and everything, I encounter more people now who are like, I watch Keep It every week.
Oh, yeah, right. No, I forget that we're visual stars. We're, real Carol Burnett shit going on here.
We started as a radio drama, and now
that's right. We're like Guiding Light. Yes, right. We started in the 1870s, and finally we're canceled mercifully in 2008.
My literal reference was going to be Guiding Light, so thank you.
No, I do have a little bit of soap opera Q, a little bit. I know that's your department, but I've got a foot in that.
All right, so we've already said we've got Paul Reiser here. And unfortunately, sadly, truly as soon as we finished recording last week, Angela Lansbury died.
I just want to say there's something that happens with actresses of a certain age passing away where people ask if I'm okay. Like, guys, I'm not like on the brink. It's like, though funny enough, we'll get into this. I officiated my cousin Brianna's wedding in the Twin Cities, and I was flying back. And on the way back, this is a week and a half ago, I was watching National Velvet, which Angela Lansbury is in. And I had the thought, it is crazy there is a living adult cast member of this fucking movie. And then so in a way, I do feel I cursed it. So apologies to everybody.
You were her People magazine cover.
Yes, right. Exactly.
So we're going to talk about Dame Angela Lansbury, an actual Dame. I feel like I put that title in front of British people all the time.
Just, Dame Ed Westwick. Not yet.
He's still waiting. You know what?
Yeah, right.
Prince Charles might be the one to give Ed Westwick that title.
That's true. Right. It gets a little dicey over there.
Yeah. And then also, we're going to talk about the critical responses to Tar and general responses to critics and their reviews. So, should be a fun episode.
Yeah, lots to talk about.
Lots of special guests. There are no special guests.
But though I do want to say, I actually wanted to start this episode by lamenting that Taylor Hale is not here. We will do everything in our power to bring her back because literally in the middle of the episode, between segments, I leaned in over Zoom and said to her, I just want you to know I'm having such a good time. So just to let you know, we love her as much as you do.
We love Taylor too. Taylor was like a fantastic co-host. I feel like part-time, I'm like, people are like, Taylor Hale, full-time. I'm like, we don't want to bore Taylor Hale when we start talking about things like Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, like bed knobs and broomsticks. Yeah.
It would be like, you seen bed knobs and broomsticks? She's like, I was actually in the Big Brother house for my entire life. So no,
right.
I've never seen that.
We're going to find out it was a Truman Show situation. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. We will be right back with more Keep It. Dame Angela Lansbury, the icon of stage and screen, passed away at age 96 last week, best known for her roles in my personal fave, The Manchurian Candidate, and also Beauty and the Beast, Murder, She Wrote, Sweeney Todd. She was a decorated Broadway actor, humanitarian, and truly, like, we throw the phrase gay icon around a lot, but she was that. I mean, she got us into Disney. She got us into Sondheim. She got us into being in your neighbor's business and solving murder mysteries.
Yes.
And with Manchurian Candidate, you know, all the Oedipal shit going on, what gay man doesn't relate to that?
You're right. Everybody has an in somehow, some way. As creepy as possible. She also has that thing that I think a gay icon should necessarily have, which is there's a broad appeal to what they do and even like a familial, comforting thing. But if you lean in a little closer, you realize there's a real saucy wit going on there. Like for those who care, there's an eyebrow raise for those who are paying attention. And she routinely had that throughout her career. I mean, something that's come up a lot this week is the movie Gaslight, which she debuted in. This is 1944. We just talked to Isabella Rossellini. It came up then because her mom, Ingrid Bergman, is the star. Charles Boyer, one of the great creepy men of cinema, is gaslighting Ingrid Bergman. And then Angela Lansbury comes in and plays the Cockney maid who is sort of instrumental in driving Ingrid to the brink. But man, for that to be a first performance, because first of all, nothing about that character says be 19 years old, which she is in that. It's so assured. Her kind of blank, kind of brutal take on the lines, but that also has humor in it. She's sort of unfazed by what's going on, and then also indicating she's willing to participate. It's just one of the great debut performances ever, and that was the first of her 3 nominations. She was also nominated for The Picture of Dorian Gray the next year. And I want to say about that movie, I mean, watch it if you're not familiar with the Oscar Wilde original tale, Picture of Dorian Gray, but there are a couple of Easter eggs in it for people who want to get to know Angela Lansbury. First of all, I think that was the first time she ever sang. So you can see her, I think it's called The Little Bird is the name of the song, but you can see her debuting her singing chops there, and they are stellar. It's a very old-fashioned song. And 2, people forget that Angela Lansbury was the daughter of an actress, and she's in that movie with her mom, Moyna McGill, who plays the Duchess.
Another Nepo baby. I get it.
That's right. That's what this is turning into. Stop celebrating her. Stop celebrating this hack. But it's my least favorite of her 3 nominated performances, but that it's good to revisit for that reason.
I mean, Donna Reed is in it, so...
No, love the cast. And then literally at the time, the guy who plays Dorian Gray, Hurd Hatfield, not a genius performance. I mean, this is what he's basically known for altogether, but he was an icon of that time. I remember my grandfather constantly bringing up Hurd Hatfield, strangely. So check it out.
It is hard to discuss Angela Lansbury just sort of like in this context now because, like you said, there's so many fucking entry points for this woman.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, I discovered Manchurian Candidate, I think, around like high school, and that's truly one of my favorite films ever. And
one of the first true great paranoid thriller movies.
Yes. I miss the era of paranoid thrillers, and you know, there's the 70s era, like, you know, 3 Days of the Condor and stuff like that.
Yep.
But there was something really just fun about like a black and white era paranoid thriller like that, like Shadow of a Doubt, you know, like there's something about the acting in those just feels so, I don't know, visceral, and it's
heightened.
It's tight. I mean, like, you know, like we talk with Paul Reiser a bit about sitcoms of his day, you know, like My Two Dads and stuff, where it was very much focused on the face, and those are films that focus on the face, you know, actors. Angela Lansbury came up in the era of acting where you had to have a good face that people wanted to look at and an emotive face. Okay, like there was no Botox here.
Yeah,
people had to move their face, and like you were moved by someone's face.
Yeah, I would almost call it based on the level of drama they had to bring, stage acting for the screen. Mm-hmm. Just that level of like, maybe the last movie to do that extremely well was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is all dramatic close-ups and people bringing you like the fire stairs and the chattering and all the things we love in close-up.
Yeah. Well, that and if you were working at Equity when Patti LuPone renounced her membership. A lot of dramatic
what a crazy
close-ups.
tweet. Yes. Patti LuPone dropped out of Equity, and her last line of the tweet is, figure it out. My friends and I have been obsessed recently with saying grow up to each other, and I feel like figure it out is the new iteration of that.
I mean, I love a throwback to Summer Sanders.
Oh, my God, yes. By the way, we need to not talk about Figure It Out right now, but Summer Sanders on that show was like 24 years old. I can't get over that. I thought of her as like an older adult, helping us fill out Billy the Answerhead together. But no, she was barely out of college, basically, because she was an Olympic gold medalist right before then. Yeah. Anyway, Angela Lansbury, she really has that Julie Andrews quality of being both immediately knowable, like someone you feel like is in your family, but at the same time so transcendent and untouchable. Like you almost can't define what that space is in between those two things. And she really exhibited that well. And I mean, one of the crimes of the century is that she never ended up getting the Emmy. She was nominated 12 years in a row for Murder, She Wrote. I want to say I can name all 6 of the women she lost to, which are both Cagney and Lacey, Sharon Glass, Ty and Daly, Kathy Baker from Picket Fences, Stella Ward from Sisters, Patricia Wettig from 30-something, and Dana Delaney twice for China Beach. So I think all of those actresses should speak up and say that they are sorry, because history has a hole in it thanks to them.
Well, not Miss Stella Ward, okay? Not too much on Stella Ward.
We do love Miss Stella Ward. When Stella Ward reappeared in Gone Girl, that's when I screamed. Then I was Gone Girl. See?
Honestly, I mean, not to divert on her for a minute too, but I feel like Stella Ward, we need to keep an appearance in 2023.
Yeah,
I have a lot to say to Stella Ward.
Okay? It'll start with a poem.
I mean, this is a potential mother. So
okay, I have to say, ever since you posted this meme of I don't know who this woman is on Housewives saying this is a
Kenya
potential
Moore
mother.
For Real Housewives.
I say it every fucking day. I'm obsessed with The Mole right now, the new season on Netflix, which we brought up last week. Every time Avery, who's like sort of the girl we're rooting for on the show, appears, I'm like, this is a potential mother.
My grandmother literally just texted me while we were recording. I think Avery is the mole. What's your guess? Because we used to watch the original Mole with Anderson Cooper together. Like we would watch it every week together. And so I text her every Friday. I'm like, there are new episodes of The Mole. You need to watch it so that we can talk about it.
Wow, that you're watching it with your family. Anybody who starts watching that show, by the way, gets addicted. So just be prepared. It could happen to you. I have literally watched all the existing episodes of this season twice. And I cannot believe I have to wait 3 more days for, it's Tuesday right now, 3 more days for this episode to come out.
But speaking of that and mysteries, Angela Lansbury's final role is in Glass Onion, Knives Out 2.
Right, and she's playing herself along with Stephen Sondheim, which means this was filming way earlier than I thought it was.
Yeah, so...
because Angela Lansbury, as I noticed, did not appear at the Tonys this year where she got that Lifetime tribute, and I suspected something was awry at that moment. I was calling doctors, and I don't know many, so it was like 2. Then she left us. Yeah, so I hope she's sensational. It was so nice seeing her in Mary Poppins Returns at the end.
Yeah, I mean, fuck Queen Elizabeth. I was queuing in Times Square to say goodbye to Angela Lansbury when I was in New York. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I should be dimming this ring light right now.
One of the films that I feel like people brought up a lot after she passed was Bedknobs and Broomsticks, obviously, because that is such an interesting one because it is a film that came out in 1971, but it feels like such a staple of my childhood, and I'm sure yours, probably just because Disney being omnipresent as we were kids. But like, I feel like it re-aired on TV, but also at some point I definitely had, like we were talking about those boxy VHSs that Disney used to put out last week with Taylor. I definitely had Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and I watched that movie constantly, and it's obviously better than the one that's just like it, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, also, it's just one of those movies like Willy Wonka that somehow came from that era and just survived. Like we kept watching it. Like I don't remember a time in my childhood without it. It's also like one of the few movies your parents pass down to you, I think. Like, oh, that's safe for them to watch or whatever.
It's wild that it's not. It's wild that that film has that it only has the staying power of the film itself. You know, you bring up Willy Wonka or something like, and there's multiple versions of that, and like even the new one coming out with Timmy Chalamet. And it's like, it's weird that no one has tried to reboot or do anything else with Bedknobs and Broomsticks. There was a musical adaptation like early 2010s, but
no, you're right. Like if we get a Hocus Pocus 2, you're telling me we don't get a Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Also, what are we saying? They will reboot it. Like no, we don't have to speak this into the atmosphere. Yeah,
she probably had an ironclad agreement with Disney. We're not rebooting that shit.
Right.
And now that she's gone, Kevin Feige, he's putting the Bedknobs and the Broomsticks in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, it's funny that you say that because she famously objected to the reboot of Murder, She Wrote, right? With Octavia Spencer.
Remember when that was supposed to happen? And
yeah,
truly one of the instances where I feel like tweets actually did doom a reboot. Like they ended that shit very quickly.
That reminds me of when there was supposed to be, I think, an adaptation of that book about Joni Mitchell, Carly Simon, and Carole King. And Taylor Swift was initially in talks to play Joni Mitchell. And Joni Mitchell, who, by the way, if you watch some Joni Mitchell interviews, I mean, the woman is unsparing. She's unkind to several of her own contemporaries. Says about Taylor Swift, they just found a blonde girl with high cheekbones. Like, woof. she was not confident in her ability to bring Joni to the screen.
I want to do a quick side note too and say that I saw a tweet, or like, I think it was a TikTok actually, that reminded us Amy Winehouse and Taylor Swift were nominated for Best New Artist in the same year at the Grammys.
That seems crazy. That's 2007, because I would have been in college then. Taylor Swift has been around that long.
It's wild because you forget that her country era when she was like, 15, 16, like was predates, the poppier era. So she was around and, people were listening to her. Like, I feel like, I remember she covered Rehab and Amy Winehouse went to a show of Taylor's. Like, they met each other. And then she said,
and then that's when she chose to pass away. Isn't that something? She's like, I'm heading out.
The Swifties are going to murder you.
Taylor has done a bunch of kind of good live covers over the years. One time Taylor covered A Sort of Fairy Tale by Tori Amos. That I respect.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Angela Lansbury. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Obviously, the big Disney one that we know Angela Lansbury for is just her voice, Mrs. Potts. And I mean, who as a kid, especially if you're a gay one, like didn't try to recreate that voice, sing, like Taylor's All This Time, exactly how she did. And honestly, one of the most heartwarming like mother-son relationships for me in cinema ever is Chip and Mrs. Potts.
Totally. I think she almost single-handedly is the elegance that elevates that movie to something that should be a Best Picture nominee, and it was. That's what sets it apart from all the other Disney movies that time, and why it's still, there's something still crystalline about Beauty and the Beast, even compared to Aladdin, which was, similarly super successful, or The Lion King or whatever. No, she's a magical voice talent. Now, what's your favorite Angela Lansbury musical performance?
It's like a lot of the gays were talking about Mame this weekend, but for me, it's still Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd.
I would be surprised if you didn't say that. Yeah.
There's a reason that's my favorite musical, and it is because in college I saw, the stage production that they filmed, and I've never been able to get that show out of my mind.
I saw a clip that went viral again after Angela died, where she's watching an old clip of her in Gypsy, I believe. And first of all, it's awesome just to watch Angela Lansbury watch herself, because she really has a sort of diagnostician's eye while she's doing it. Like she is a bit emotional at the end, but she's mostly watching it like a scary drama teacher analyzing a student. So that's fun. But man, you forget like the gale force power of her. Again, it's like it's something that sets her apart from someone like Julie Andrews, who I think through and through was pretty delicate with whatever she did, even in something like Victor Victoria. But Angela Lansbury will freak you the fuck out, and she will make you stand back. And I think it's a quality about her that people underestimate.
Yeah. Also, I want to say, speaking of Mame, unfortunately, I have never seen Mame on stage. And so my Mame to me is Lucille Ball.
Which is one of the most shocking things you'll ever see in You do have B. Arthur there to soften the blow, but watching Lucille Ball be not Lucy and be Mame is, it's just not right. It's just...
The movie's actually horrifying, and I think it's actually why I don't like the musical.
Well, it discolors what you think of it, yeah.
Yeah. But no one is thinking of no one's thinking of The King and I. Let's be honest.
Right. We should just drop the trivia fact that Angela Lansbury's daughter narrowly escaped being a Manson cult member. They, in fact, fled
that came
Los
out
Angeles for that.
This week, too. And I need anyone but Ryan Murphy to get their hands on the rights to that story first. I cannot do it. I cannot deal with Manson being on Netflix, the #1 show, for 50 weeks or whatever. And it's about, from Angela Lansbury and saving her daughter's lives perspective. I'm not going to do it.
Though, you know what? I do think Sarah Paulson could play Angela Lansbury from around that time. I will say that.
She absolutely could. But you know what? Let someone else cast her.
Okay. So, all right. That's true. It's true. Other people are avail. So
escape the Ryan Murphy ghetto, Sarah Paulson. When I tell you that I turned on Netflix and I saw The Watcher and I was like, oh, another new show is #1. And then I looked and I saw another Ryan Murphy production. Who's watching her?
Right. It's interesting. No, and for a while I thought at Netflix he wasn't doing that well, and now he's the king of Netflix somehow.
It's like he recorded 50 things and one it's Tyler Perry Productions over there.
Yeah, right. Every day something new. How is that even possible?
Ryan Murphy also grew up homeless in his car and is best friends with Oprah. So, same thing.
It works out. Anyway, Angela Lansbury, that's about as long a life as you can expect from a living legend, and also as much time as you can expect from someone to give grade A material. This is somebody I saw perform in Blithe Spirit in my 30s. So, that's fucking crazy. So that she was also a co-star of Charles Boyer once upon a time, a co-star of Dame May Whitty, So thank God we got as much time with her as we did. And I just want to say, I brought up National Velvet earlier. My favorite parents in a film are Donald Crisp and Anne Revere, who won an Oscar for that movie in National Velvet. Watch that movie for the best parents ever.
Okay. What's your favorite sort of unexpected Angela Lansbury role, or something that people haven't really been bringing up this week?
Well, we talked about Manchurian Candidate quickly. I think that still is the answer. Also, just the way she, abuses that kid. Lawrence Harvey, who plays the person in question, interesting actor, because he burned really hot for a few years and then died somewhat suddenly, I believe, of alcoholism and all sorts of other vices. But he's somebody who is basically known for great performances alongside even greater female performances. So he was in Room at the Top with Simone Signoret. She won Best Actress for that. He's the man in Butterfield 8 with Elizabeth Taylor, which is a daffy movie that she is sensational in. Do not let anybody shade that Oscar win for you. It has been shaded over time. And also,
Butterfield 8, by the way, has last through pop culture through Drag Race.
Yes, the lipstick on the mirror is essentially from Butterfield 8. And he's also in Darling with Julie Christie, which she won Best Actress for anyway. But Angela Lansbury is so throbbingly intense and kind of frightening in that movie. So I would say that. What would you say?
Death on the Nile. Manchurian Candidate is my favorite.
I love Death on the Nile.
Yeah.
I love Death on the Nile.
Yeah, but Death is a close second. So, the cast is stacked. We always talk about Mia Farrow in that film, but, Maggie Smith, Betty Davis,
Betty Davis, who's just, if I remember correctly, sitting by herself on a layer of the boat that nobody else can get to. Like she's like in the sky somehow. And the actual mystery of it is very labyrinthine. The ending is crazy, but still makes way more sense than Murder on the Orient Express. I'm sure you guys have seen the 2 reboots by Kenneth Branagh. Stick to the originals.
He's making a new one, and I'm sort of like accepting the fact that we're gonna get a mid Agatha Christie adaptation from Kenneth Branagh like every 2 years now.
At least this new one I haven't seen done before, so maybe there'll be some novelty in letting the story unfold. Because I'm not like an Agatha Christie scholar or anything. I just know like the main ones. So that'll be something. Yeah, Tina Fey is allegedly in it, right? Yeah. I just have to say I get a little nervous about Tina when she's in things she didn't write. Because I saw a couple of those movies, and I forgot that I was a huge Tina stan watching them.
Why did you make me remember Whiskey Tango Foxtrot?
That's what I'm talking about. Or This Is Where I Leave You. There was like an ensemble cast, and I was like, woof, Tina was Jennifer Aniston not available? You know, one of those?
The morning show is it's very time consuming. So Jennifer is not available.
I guess not, yeah.
All right, when we are back, we're joined by the fantastic Paul Reiser. Our next guest you have seen in things like Aliens, Mad About You, Whiplash, most recently Stranger Things, but now his new show, Reboot, is out on Hulu. We are delighted to welcome to Keep It, the great Paul Reiser.
The great. That's special. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I think great is apt.
You said that in a traditional Paul Reiser withering way, which we appreciate also. Thank you.
I want to say that, first off, my name is Ira, but having grown up in Milwaukee, where I didn't encounter anyone else named Ira until I went to college, the only other time I heard the name was watching Mad About You.
Cousin Ira. Well, we did that for you. We wanted you to be Cousin Ira. Yeah, there are certain names that you don't see a lot of them for a bunch of years. Like now, in 2022, are there babies being born named Howie? I don't know. I don't know because there are names that are so old that they become cool again. Murray or old guy names, but Howie hasn't been around long enough to be an old guy name. So now, why were you named Ira? Was there? There were 3. There were 2 before you.
There were 3. Yeah, so it was a lineage thing.
It was sort of written in the stars. No way out of it.
Yeah.
All right.
The names that I still associate with quote unquote young people are not named. Nobody names them after. Like there are no Jessicas anymore. I feel like that cycle has really sped up.
That can't be true.
I feel like they're not around. Yeah. There's no Lindsays anymore. There's no Lindsays anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of a new Stewie. Just. But anyway, Ira, I'm glad to have helped you in your childhood.
Thank you. And speaking about that show, you were in Reboot, which is about rebooting a sitcom. And you were just in recently a reboot of Mad About You, although technically not a reboot. I'm always forgetting the exact words. It's a return.
A continuation.
It's a sequel. A continuation.
I get mocked mercilessly by my castmates on a Reboot because whenever this issue comes up, and I make a point of saying Mad About You wasn't a reboot. Because in my mind, Reboot is let's go back and pretend that it's the same, but we're just going to do it again. And in Mad About You's case, we were very specific. No, we're not at all trying to pretend it's 1992. We're not pretending we're 29 and 30 again. No, we're coming back because we haven't seen these folks for 20 plus years. So let's actually pick up now. Where are they? They're older. They walk slower. They don't hear as well. Their kid is a pain in the neck. So it was definitely, where would they have been 20 years later? But, yeah, whatever. It's a reboot. But Reboot, the show Reboot, is indeed, in fact, a show about a cast trying to come back. Although within our show, the new young writer is trying to make it different and socially conscious and more lifelike. And the fun of it is that my character plays the guy who wants to keep it sitcom, cutesy, old, jokey, and that's a big part of the generational divide there.
How appealing was a show that gives people a glimpse behind the scenes and into perhaps the cynicism of making a TV show? Did you read the script and think, oh, these are some of the thoughts I've had about making TV at any given point in my career?
Well, it's funny, one of the concerns that we hear all the time is like, were you worried it would be too inside baseball? And the truth is it's not, because the show is really about these characters who could be in any workplace. They could be in an office. They could be in the post office. They could be in whatever. They all have human problems. They just happen to be on this show. And yes, there are a couple of things. There are a couple of lines here and there that I go, I don't know anybody's going to understand that. But it doesn't diminish your enjoyment. There are a couple of things that, as somebody who's been in television, you go, wow, that's a sentence I only hear in a writer's room. There's one line where somebody comes in and it says, do you want us to work on the tag or blue sky the next episode? I went, blue sky? I don't never even use that word. Work on the tag. And I thought, yeah, tag is something you only have in half-hour sitcoms. But it was very appealing because it is sort of like having your cake and eating it too. For me, it's like I'm not eager to do another multicam sitcom, and I don't imagine I would, but you never know. But this was sort of about that, but it wasn't that. So it was the reverse angle. So you see it's about the writers and the actors, and it's not about the show at all. And in fact, people say it's mocking the half-hour traditional sitcom, but in a way it's poking fun, but it's very affectionate, because all of us involved have had experience and success in the half-hour sitcom world. So we're not going at it to bite the hand that has fed us.
What's interesting about, I guess, you in the half-hour sitcom world is you have experienced different sort of iterations of it. I have to imagine that My Two Dads was a lot different than the experience of making sitcoms around the Mad About You era, and then even now, working on something. Like, what about making sitcoms has sort of changed for you for the better? And is there anything that you sort of miss from, I don't know, like that first show where you feel like, I miss this era of sitcoms, or like something that we used to do?
No, I don't miss anything. But I was saying to somebody, in the world of streaming now, everything's available all the time, forever. So you never say, oh, gee, I missed that. And I realized, I miss missing. I miss missing. I missed it. I was like, well, now that just doesn't come up anymore. There's no uniform feel or tone to half-hour comedies. So in the 80s, there were sort of these family-oriented shows, but then there were other shows that had different tones. And in the 90s, when we were doing Mad About You, Friends was not really the same as Mad About You. Seinfeld was its own sensibility, and they were still making shows like Full House and so on, that were conventional. So it was never either or. There always were these things. In Mad About You, we were very aware we were a half-hour television show, and we did it in front of a live audience, so we wanted to get those people, but we were also our sort of mission statement was the characters themselves are not on a TV show. We know it's a TV show, but we want them to look like life. So a lot of times we would have someone pitch a great joke, and you go, it's a little too, sounds like a joke. It sounds like somebody on a sitcom would say. It's funny, and it's a great line, but it's going to pop the frame. It's going to make one of us look like, because in sitcoms, somebody said, we'll send a zinger, and the other person just sort of takes it, and then you move on. In real life, if somebody said that, you go, what the hell? Why would you say that? And I think what's funny in Reboot is the character played by Rachel Bloom comes into this wanting to make it more lifelike, and say, well, characters wouldn't say that. There's a line, and I think one of the early episodes where I said, well, what if he comes in and he trips on something? And she says, well, people don't do that in real life. They don't just trip exactly when you need them to trip. And my character says, they can if you write that. And then I realized that really made me laugh. It's like, yeah, they can kind of do whatever you say, but if you want it to look real, perhaps they don't trip on the ottoman every time.
Speaking of zingers, something I was thinking about, just what I like watching about you specifically, and I feel like you are one of the great reactors to someone saying something crazy or saying something provocative. Like you will then retort with something hilarious. Like Matthew Perry is another good example of that, or the entire show Seinfeld. And obviously, we associate that skill set with you and Helen Hunt. But do you have favorite co-stars that you've gotten to sort of react to, and they throw something weird out, and you get to come back with something funny or unexpected?
Well, with Helen Hunt, it was we were lucky. We just, when I was just writing the show, I met her, and I just had this instinct. I went, I think her, and she wasn't at all what I had in my mind. I was picturing my wife, who doesn't look at all like Helen, but there was something about her, and we just really clicked. So the give and take was always there, and sometimes it was in quick repartee, sometimes it was just in that reaction and it is really fun when somebody says something, and in real life you may take a second to go, let me let that stay in the air and let you hear what you just said. One of my favorite laughs, and it was early on, one of the first maybe 10 or 12 Mad About Yous, there was a really wacky idea. We used to always joke that it's a show about the small things, and then once in a while we'd have some crazy ass premise and go, yeah, not so much the small thing. But anyway, in this show was about virtual reality, and I went and invested with cousin Ira in this crazy, at the time, it's a '93 futuristic virtual reality show. So it was very kind of high tech. But the best, most fun scene, most fun to write and play, was the scene of coming home, and we're in bed, and it's just the two of us, and two shot, and I have to explain to my wife why I just invested a big chunk of our bank account into this crazy thing. And she said, and I said, oh, it's great. You can put yourself in any situation. You can do any activity. You could fly. You could, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You can do anything. And she's warming up. She said, well, what did you pick? And I said, I got a massage from Christy Brinkley. And you just see Helen's head just turns ever so slightly to the side, like, And the audience really went. I went, that was, to me, a landmark. I thought, we are where we want to be. The audience now knows what's coming and what she's feeling and what trouble I'm in. You think of Archie Bunker and those silences, just a cock of a head, and you just go, oh, these guys so well. It's funny to watch All in the Family again. Sometimes it'll come up on TV, and the shots are so tight. They're just the head, and you go, that's enough. Like I don't need to see Archie Bunker's waist. This is where the funny is. This is where, and you know them so well. So when in that little closed environment, if Meathead says something that's going to bounce off Archie, you can feel it, and so those reactions, and on TV you get to see them even more so than theater, right? You're put the camera where you want, so you can see a raised eyebrow, and going back to sort of answer your question, what's different, because there are now comedies that don't have audiences and laugh tracks, but they're absolutely equally funny. It takes the pressure off them being jokes, and you don't need to hear laugh, 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 laugh. So, we did Kaminsky Method, and Chuck Lorre created that, and he's the master. He's got, 1,000 shows on multicam shows. But on this show, he acknowledged that one of the things that he learned was you don't have to write for the joke. You can get the joke, you can get the funny in the pause and in the reaction. And so that has freed it up to be a little bit more cinematic and a little bit more realistic, that you can see, let it land and let a moment play without reaching too hard for a joke.
I want to ask you a bit about your turn in Whiplash, which I thought was really a fantastic performance from you. And it's such a film that I feel like people are still talking about Whiplash. I feel it's one of Chazelle's, maybe my favorite Chazelle film.
I think it's my favorite.
Actually,
still, yeah.
Yeah. And just sort of what was that experience like for you doing this sort of like dramatic role that was also just sort of, there's so much, I feel like there's sort of like a lot of longing in that role, but sort of a lot of anger too.
Yeah, I just saw a really funny clip. I don't know what it's from, but it was Sir Ian McKellen and Ricky Gervais, and Sir Ian McKellen explaining what acting is, and he says, "What I do," the whole thing is like it's a big secret, and he just says, "What I do." Like in Harry Potter, I'm not a wizard, or Lord of the Rings, whatever it was. He goes, "I'm not a wizard." Or Harry Potter, he said, "But I pretend to be a wizard, and the words are written." And it's just, it's like there's no magic. Just here's the words. You pretend to be that. I'm not actually. But in Whiplash, he had Damien Chazelle was freaking 26, I think, when he made that, and 24 when he wrote it. Just pisses me off. And I mean, he's just crazy talented and a really sweet guy. And I had read the script. Actually, before I read the script, I had seen he made a sort of a sample of the movie, just as a sales tool to raise the money to make Whiplash. So he shot like 11 or 17 minutes or something like that. The middle scene where that first time you see the J.K. Simmons, throw the chair, and you just go, "Oh my God, this guy is out of his mind." And in this little film, it wasn't Miles Teller, it was a different young actor, but J.K. was in it, and it was great. It was just a demo film. He made it for like $11, and my thought was like, why is he making this into a full feature? This is great. And there was no father. It was just that scene. I went, this is beautiful. And so then I read the script. And I said, oh, there's more to this story, and there's a father, and it was just really written beautifully and subtly. And I have two kids of my own, two boys who are now in their 20s, but they were younger when we made this, obviously. And one of the things, I don't know if either of you have kids. I already have kids. No, all right. Well,
we just have
find somebody who does and get them to confirm this. One of the things, the bittersweet truths is, well, this from having been kids, is that at a certain point, parents can only guide so much. And at a certain point, the kid's going to go, I understand, but I do want to jump out of a plane. I do want to try these drugs. I do want to go, backpacking through this part of the world that I shouldn't be by myself. And like, okay. And that was in the script, in this thing of the father felt the pain and the horrible thing when your child is going through something and can't extricate themselves. And in that case, in Whiplash, it's like not just some problem he has of himself. There's another outside guy fucking with his son. And, short of assassinating the guy, like you have to sort of let this play out and hope that it doesn't end too terribly. And, and what Damien Chazelle wrote into that also was that the father was not a great achiever, that he had wanted to be a novelist and didn't succeed, and now he teaches high school English. Okay. But a good dad, a good person. And, one of the beautiful pieces of writing in that is, and J.K. Simmons' gorgeous performance, when he's just sort of acting friendly, and he says, "Oh, tell me about your parents," and Miles Teller spills all the beans. My father teaches it, and then 20 minutes later, he uses all that. J.K. Simmons uses all that as weapons. He goes, "Yeah, your mommy left you, and your father's a failure." It's like, oh Jesus, it's so brutal. He just shared this, and now you're beating him up with it. So the experience was great. That was one of those things where I knew it was going to be a beautiful film. I didn't know it would be a success. You never know that. But I knew from seeing that short, that I said, well, this guy knows how to make a beautiful movie, and the script was so tense. And the first time I saw it was at Sundance, and it was the premiere. It was the opening night, whatever they call that. It was like the big opening event of Sundance in the big theater. There's one like 1,500, 2,000 seat theater. and I had not seen it. And it played like it was The Exorcist. There's like people like grabbing each other, strangers. Gah! It's like, this teacher just threw a chair at his head. What? And
it's a very tense film.
And it's almost all the more tense because it's not special effects. Like, no, that's a chair. That's a guy's head. And I'm watching going, how did they film that? That really came close to his head. And I remember afterwards, we had the screening, and the screening was just as good as it could be. And I remember, I don't know, we went to whatever the next event was or the party, and my wife and I were in the car with Damien and his wife, and Damien's just cool and, reserved. And I said, do you understand that you are in the moment that every aspiring filmmaker wants to be? You just had your film kick ass on the opening night in the theater, and there is literally, they talk about, well, there's buzz at Sundance. We're in that moment. He went, yeah, I guess so. I went, okay. I mean, I don't know what I needed from him to sell it more, but I was aware too. I was like, oh, this is what they talk about. Oh, it was the talk of Sundance. Like, we're in that moment right now. You just blew the roof off, and the fact that it went on and won, I think, 5 Academy Awards for screenplay and JK, and editing was great. Yeah, it was such a great film because in the script, if I recall the ending, it's just like, sometimes you see one sentence that is supposed to be 15 minutes of film, and then there's a big battle. Yeah, okay, you shoot it, and then there's a big competition, and the band is great. Like, all right, well, maybe, but how are you going to do that? And, and the last scene is all this tension of, who's screwing who? Is JK screwing the kid? Oh, the kid is screwing him. No, JK is actually a step ahead. And they do it with music, and they fade out, and they come in, and then the music itself was exciting. You're going, this is unbelievable. You actually made drama and tension out of a jazz band playing at a show. Like, that could so easily not be great, and it was great.
Yeah, no, sonically very memorable. Every year on Christmas, my family and I watch a movie together, and my mom falls asleep during everything. And I was like, I'm going to do Whiplash, and I guarantee she will stay awake through it. And that is the one time she did.
Yeah, because a parent can't watch that. A parent can't watch a kid getting brutalized by a teacher and not stay awake.
I want to say something about the Kominsky method, which is I can't think of another show in the past 10 years where the level of legend involved is that staggering. And I just think of Alan Arkin in general, who has always been around and has always been amazing. I think he's the only person who was nominated for an Oscar in the 1960s and the 2010s. That level of quality, for that long, is just. Do you have any particular memories of working with those guys?
Yeah, well, Alan Arkin. There were a handful of guys that I idolized. And I was never, as a kid, I was into comedians. I wasn't into acting. So I didn't care. I mean, I think it's when I was in my 20s, you start going, wow, this De Niro guy's cool. Al Pacino is great. But I didn't watch and watch movies and, oh, James Stewart is, whatever. But a few guys popped that I just loved as an audience. I go, I will watch anything with this guy. And it was Jack Lemmon. It was Peter Falk,
of course,
to an absurd degree. I adored Peter Falk, and Alan Arkin. And I think the first time I saw Alan Arkin as a kid was in The Russians Are Coming. And he played this Russian guy, which you probably couldn't even do now. Like, are you allowed to use an accent to pretend to be from another country? But he was so funny. And then I saw Wait Until Dark, where he was nominated for that, and he plays this sinister murderer, and you go, that's the same guy. And then there's a movie that I just watched recently called Poppy, where he plays a Puerto Rican landlord, I think. And I thought again, well, you couldn't do that. You couldn't have a non-Latino play a Puerto Rican guy. But he was brilliant in that. And there was something always so off, in the best way, offbeat. His rhythm, his line readings. And I will watch an Alan Arkin movie and just, what did he just do with that line? It was so odd and beautiful. And so when The In-Laws came out, I go, Peter Falk and Alan Arkin? Yeah, I'm in. I must have seen that 100 times. And each of them plays to their strengths. And Alan Arkin, my understanding is Alan Arkin was producing that, and he reached out to get Peter Falk, and he thought we'd be funny together. And Peter Falk goes, yeah, sure. And Peter goes, I think maybe, you should be making trouble for me. And Peter Falk went, whatever you say, sure. But it was, what Alan Arkin was the put upon, stressed guy in that. He was basically reacting. And Peter,
Yes.
what I always loved about Peter, he was so funny and then so endearing and so touching. And it could be moment to moment. It would switch off. And in The In-Laws, which is a flat out comedy, part of what's so funny is it vacillates so quickly. You go, oh, Peter Falk's character, he's obviously out of his fucking mind. This guy's crazy. And then a second later, you go, oh no, he's quite serious. He works with the CIA. Oh no, he's nuts. He's absolutely nuts. And that push and pull and Alan Arkin is the guy trying to go, oh. And one of the joys of my life is I got to work with both of those guys. I wrote a movie for Peter Falk just because I wanted to work with him. And it was called The Thing About My Folks that 15 people saw, but it was a dream come true. And he was just brilliant. He was just great. He was just so great. And I loved him. And Alan, I only got to do one episode of Kaminsky with him. And one scene, we were in this booth and, just watching him up close and getting a laugh out of him. At one point where he was cracking up and he said, sorry, man, you just make me laugh. I went, take me now, Lord. That's it. Alan, that I make him laugh. I don't know that I need anything else above that. But I'll tell you, one of the sort of surprises, not surprises, but one thing that was revealed to me, Michael Douglas, I had worked 2 little times with him. I did a movie that he was in and produced called One Night at McCool's, and we had one scene, I think, together, and then I had one day of work in the Liberace movie, and I'd met him and I knew him, but I hadn't really spent time. So the first day we're working on Kaminsky, and we're in a car. I think it was the first thing we shot, and Michael he's just kind of playing it to what I thought was a little low-voiced and not particularly, it was a little quiet and still. And in my idiot head, I'm going, I don't think he's going to like this. He don't look too good. He's not doing anything. And then I watch the film, I go, this guy's a fucking genius. He's so precise, and he knows exactly, yes, here's the volume of this scene, and here's, he was so in that character. And he's one of those guys I realized, he's been around so long and he's been doing it so well for so long that you can almost take it for granted and you don't notice it. But getting to see how he does it and how extensively he prepares and how well prepared he showed up, it's like, oh, it was actually like going to acting class. So, so it was an education for me to see how you get to be that good.
I want to ask you about one last actor you worked with, and this is truly, when I think about Paul Reiser, yes, mad about you, but when I think about why, my grandmother, and my mom, love you, and I'm like, black people love Paul Reiser, and it's like, it truly is Beverly Hills Cop and you in films with Eddie Murphy. And if you're in an Eddie Murphy film, especially the 80s, we'll remember you because you'll also be on TV. Funny. All the time in our house.
That's so true. I mean, it's so funny. I mean, that's 40 years ago, and to this day, people, that's really funny. And I had such a tiny part in Beverly Hills Cop. I was barely in it, and we just shot Beverly Hills Cop 4, and so
really it's coming.
It's coming.
Great.
And and I had 2 days of work on it. I had a little scene, and it's 40 years later, and we were in, and I'm looking at Eddie. And when we shot the first one, I already knew Eddie from the comedy club, so it was really, I wasn't, so thunderstruck of oh my God, it's Eddie Murphy. It's oh, I know him. One thing I did learn is if you're on film, and I certainly knew this in the second one, if you're in a movie with Eddie Murphy, just stand there and shut up. Just going back to your original thing, just reacting. There's a scene where people said, "Oh," and they'll do that scene. "Oh, you're so funny." I go, "Yeah, I didn't say anything. That was Eddie. You were laughing at Eddie." But they show me looking at him, and no, I get to ride in on his little wave because it's like, yeah, if you're with Eddie Murphy, you're going to look better. So, but that in Beverly Hills Cop 1, that scene in the locker room, and it was just, we had the scene, and Eddie, I think we improvised a lot of it. And he'd be like, I'm not listening to you. And, and I was just supposed to be peppering him. And then the boss comes in, and I went, there's no exit for me. I don't know how to get out of the scene, and I'm not in it. And then so I think we improvised on the thing that I'm playing with the locker, and I'm listening. And then, wasn't Gil Hill, who was the actual Detroit cop. He actually, in real life, was a cop. He says, yeah, Jeffrey, get the fuck out of here. And I go, oh, this is not my locker. That is the one thing, almost without fail, people come over and go, hey, this is not my locker. I'm going, and I because we were doing the new one, I rewatched the first one. I go, it barely even made it in the movie. It was like on a cut. It was like, I said, it's not my locker. And I went, it's almost inaudible. And for some reason, that line, people come over, but I didn't understand it for years. People would come over in an airport and go, hey, that's not my suitcase. I go, what? Oh, Beverly Hills Cop. You're doing a Beverly Hills Cop show. But that is very sweet, and I'm glad that you're very touched with your mother and grandmother. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to be in a movie with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, truly, that film came out, and it was, I think, was it like 13 or 14 weeks or something, like at number one at the box office? So it's
you also see it. I think it must have been Stranger Things, where it's in the 80s. And they're in a video store, and there's a big cutout of Axel Foley, and it's like just the poster for the movie was an icon of that decade. It's like it was just so huge, Yeah, and Eddie is so singularly talented, and I got to tell him this when we worked on this recently. Watching him on SNL, was it last year or 2 years ago, was so joyful. And that's what I was getting from him. It's like watching him, it's like, oh, Eddie's having fun. Because like he's kind of been staying home a lot. He's been really content to not be in the public, which God bless, that's great for him. It's disappointing for us who want to see him do his thing. And on SNL, when he came back, you just see over the course of the 90 minutes, he seemed to just have more and more fun. And part of what's so great about, his most memorable characters, I think, are the really childlike characters. They're just, he's doing buckwheat and you're going, it's ridiculous, but it's just so stupid funny. And we would watch that over and over again, crying, laughing, and we were talking about going back and doing stand-up, and he said, I want to, but, I don't know. I go, just do it. There's no, as a fan, it's like, and I'm certainly not the only one. People would be lined up around a block just to see you do it. And I'd be really curious to see what he does material-wise. You watch his old specials and like, oh, he was so brash and so cocky, and, he was 20, 21. Okay, well, now he's a father, and I think might even be a grandfather. It's like, now we're in our 60s. I'd be really love to hear what you come up with. I'd love to hear what's making your brain and your heart move at 60. So I hope he does. I hope he gets out there.
I've never thought to compare him to Gilda Radner before, but her best characters were always very childlike too. And you would not think of them as continuations,
Being silly is inherently a childlike thing. If an adult is silly, they can look foolish. Jerry Lewis always talked about like, oh, his Renee was, the 5-year-old. Well, it wasn't quite a normal 5-year-old. It was a Jerry Lewis. but in his mind, he was being childlike, and Lucille Ball, Lucy, or there's a lot of funny, and yes, the kid, because you lose that sense of play, Carol Burnett, even. I wouldn't say Mel Brooks is childlike, but the idea of being playful is itself childlike. So, but Eddie, it's interesting. When he started, he was so confident, and it was kind of staggering. We started out in the city, in New York, and Eddie was out on Long Island, and he was, a little bit removed. He was like a satellite of New York. So we kept hearing. there's a kid, man. He's 16 and he's really funny. His name is Eddie Murphy, and he's great. So we would hear about, it's like, well, this guy must be good that we're hearing about somebody who hasn't even come into the city yet. And then the first time he came in, the first time I saw him, I was like, what? Are you kidding? He just took the stage. And I was remembering this, that he would get a laugh before, just upon hitting the mic, getting to the mic, because his introduction was, please welcome Irish Eddie Murphy. And then he'd show up, and he don't look Irish, and he'd get a laugh. He has no get a laugh. I go, fuck, that's really brilliant. But he didn't seem to ever exude an ounce of insecurity or, he just was so rock solid. But there was so much that was, in the beginning, was brash and young, and I can say anything I want, and I can curse, and I can say, and I can make fun of these people and those people, and he would even sort of joke about that. Like, I'm going to tell you a bit. I remember seeing him here in some huge amphitheater, 80s, and he was make fun of what he used to do when he was 16 on stage, and he, it was really sophomoric stuff about toilet humor. I'm going, you're making fun of it, but you're actually getting a laugh, so you're still doing it. So he knew, like, that was part of his thrill. I can do the silliest shit and get away with it. And he would and he would show the world how great he is. But now the whole world has already told him how great he is. And he's 60s. He's 61 or 2 or something. So I'm really curious as a fan, as a friend, just to see, like, what are you going to do now? Because you so clearly are a giant. You don't need to prove that to anybody. And also, people in their 60s don't have the same drive and energy as their 20s. So who are you now? And he seems much mellower and very content with his life. And, you can't be a bigger success than him. So just as a comic and as a fan, I would love to know what comes out of his, next phase as a comic. Maybe we can start something very big here. Maybe he's listening.
Eddie, dial us up. Yeah, the number's on the screen.
Thank you so much for being here, Paul.
It was fun, man.
Tar, the latest film from Todd Field, and starring Cate Blanchett, is out now in theaters. Most people are loving it, including us, obviously. At least one prominent film critic did not. And honestly, that's fine. But it was
Right.
Richard Brody. And I want to say, first of all, I love a Richard Brody review. I honestly do. I feel like the way that he writes about film is still like sort of like a lost art of like writing, like criticism writing. It's like it's actually like writing about the film. It's like it's knowing knowledge of film. Even when Richard doesn't like a film that I love, I'm not mad at it. I will go when he finds the twists in Don't Worry, Darling, ingenious. I feel like the twists and turns in Olivia Wilde's life are more ingenious than what's going on in that movie. Okay, like maybe if Harry Styles was jumping in front of cars to keep Florence from leaving Suburbia, from leaving Victory in that movie, we'd be talking about it a bit more. Okay.
That's true. It's also just like nice to have a contrarian film critic because it's something to judge. Like if people are like unanimously positive about a movie, it's nice to have the one person to compare it to. Like if you were to criticize this movie, what would that sound like? And so you can at least entertain the idea of, of thinking another way about a movie. But yes, he writes for the New Yorker. If we didn't establish that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's not like he's Armand White.
Right. Which, by the way, some of those also legendary. When Armand White would step up to be like, what movie is the best of the year? Jonah Hex or whatever. So funny.
And that's sort of what I love about film critics. I mean, it's honestly very fun when they do have an opinion that's different from yours, and when they at least have the tools to discuss why in their brain it's not working for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the reason a negative review of Tar would be notable is this is a movie that has on Metacritic something in the 90s. It's like Carol for Cate Blanchett, another that level critical success. And I want to say about the movie that, first, it is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. So if you're going to have a problem with it, it's probably about, if anything could be cut. But it's not even fair to call it a good performance or even a great performance. I want to just say it's a genius performance, which seems trite given that she is playing a genius in the movie. Mm-hmm. But the levels of what she brings are so surprising. It's like Blue Jasmine in terms of this character disintegrating, kind of, times Black Swan, the drama of Black Swan, times Phantom Thread. So you've got like a gothic stateliness that follows everything in this movie, and the mastery of tone, I think, is the real star of the movie that Todd Field has really nailed here. But it's about a female conductor who is an EGOT winner, and I just want to say that all of Twitter has discussed how that is even really possible, what she would have in the E and the G and the O and the T, but I'll accept it, and how she has kind of compartmentalized everything in her life, including her indiscretions, including her transgressions. And you watch how all those things kind of catch up with her as the movie goes on, and as you get a lot of very intense orchestra scenes. So it's just an amazingly symphonic and yet harrowing movie.
I would even add that it has a bit, not just in subject matter, but a bit of, like the fun intrigue and camp at times of Notes on a Scandal.
Yeah. Oh, it's also very funny.
Yes,
like,
it's
the
a
dialogue alone is hilarious.
I truly have never seen Cate Blanchett be better. This is truly
I have to agree. Yeah.
This is a career best for her, and every sardonic line reading from her is just it's hilarious. It's a hilarious movie. There's a moment early on where she's just sort of like sitting in a restaurant too, and like the camera is just focused, like on her face too, and it's just wonder how many takes she's doing of a scene like that, because it's like every moment the camera's on her face, she's living in that role.
Oh yeah, and when I bring up Phantom Thread, a big reason I compare it to that movie is the crackling wit, the devastating condescension of that character is a lot like Daniel Day-Lewis in Phantom Thread. So there's lots to dig into in this movie. The thing that may bristle is that it's a movie that is entertaining the world of cancel culture, which even by saying those two words, I feel like a fucking Republican. As we know, I hate the words cancel culture. We've talked about how it's consequences culture. We're all on the same page about that. So by even making a story about it, you're like, is there something sinister or slightly right of center going on here?
And making it a woman too, it's sort of like, that's a lot of the critiques that I've heard being like, is this just a Me Too film? But it's about a woman, so it's women can do it too. And I'm like, there's so much more going on beyond that.
Though it is interesting. I'll get to that in a second. So at first you're like, yeah, what is the point of view of this? But really, I think the strength of the movie is it's not saying whether what happens to her is all good or all bad or or like telling you what to think. It's saying, here's a version of what would happen to someone like this. And even though she has moved everything in her life like a chess piece, like even though you can only master your life for so long before something else takes over, before consequences take over, I think is part of what the movie's about. But you're right. I do think it's a weird movie to make about a woman, because the movie has to basically invent a power structure for her to abuse that doesn't, I think, exist in real life. Like in this movie, Lydia Tarr, Cate Blanchett's character, is a queer woman, and she takes advantage of all these other like queer cellists and violinists walking. It's like, is this a parallel with real life? Is there like a queer circuit of cellists I don't know about?
Yeah, maybe if the movie was about Jenna Lyons.
Yeah, see, right.
Who, by the way,
now it makes sense.
Who, by the way, is now a Real Housewife of New York.
I just heard that.
They've rebooted the entire. There's going to be a Real Housewives of New York legacy to keep like some of the older women, the women who've been on it before, for fans, to still see them like in like another offshoot series. But they've completely rebooted Brony with new women, and I was shocked when Jenna Lyons was added into it, because I remember how bizarre and interesting we found her HBO Max series. And it'll just be interesting seeing like a lesbian with that weird brain on TV doing reality. I think it'll be fun.
Which calls to mind, I am very ready for a world of fan fiction about Tar. I want to hear about Tar's disastrous relationship with Annie Leibovitz in the 80s. I want to hear about her ongoing feud with Fran Lebowitz. I want to hear, there's just like, it's a rare character. So like you just want to hear more about her, because I can't think of like what's another movie with somebody like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I saw the film, my friend, who I'm not going to name names to embarrass him, but was convinced it was a biopic.
Oh, help me God.
Because what it does, though, is I think they had heard from someone that it was a biopic, and like my other friends were trying to remember who it was about. But the thing is, the character that is created here, you're right, I do want to hear about her history. I do want to see the fanfic. I would watch a Tar TV series, to be honest.
Yeah,
because I feel like the character is so well drawn.
Right. The strength of the movie is you know exactly who this person is, even though you've not seen her in another movie before. I think that's definitely true. By the way, all the other performances in this movie are amazing. The woman, she lives with Nina Foss, amazing. That woman from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, who's like her assistant, awesome.
Mark Strong is so good
Mark
in this
Strong
film.
is, of course, in it. Yes.
And
Also, how are you feeling, though, about this Best Actress race? Because let me tell you, the stands are revved up about Michelle Yeoh, our friend from Keep It, in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I have to tell you, it's not that I want her to lose. It's a very even race, I think. And
it's time to talk about it. It's time to talk about it, because honestly, this is such an exciting year with, I think, career bests from the women in the race right now. I mean, Viola Davis in The Woman King is doing things that I have never seen her do before. You know?
She was invigorating. I wonder if that movie suffers in retrospect from seeming a little pat. Like it ends and it's like, oh, she's the Woman King. You know?
Yeah.
But like, we're about to get Michelle Williams in The Fabelmans, and obviously we've discussed how it's a smallish role that's being entered in Best Actress, but Michelle Williams has this career of goodwill going for her. You've never disliked a Michelle Williams performance. She was fucking sensational as Gwen Verdon, sensational in Brokeback Mountain, sensational as the best friend of Busy Phillips, which is, as you know, the most trying role of all. Actually, we love Busy Phillips. But it's like, how can you vote against that? It's a bunch of performances that I can't imagine voting against.
And it's also, I will say that there's the Spielberg factor too, you know?
Right.
Like,
yes.
I feel like, is there Spielberg fatigue?
Which is interesting because it felt like it barely got off the ground with West Side Story, you know, which people refused to go see.
Which I loved that film. But it's interesting it'll be interesting to see what shakes out in this race. I mean, for me, it's Kate. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's between Kate. I mean, Kate, Viola, and Michelle are like all doing amazing things this year, but it's like, wow, I love Kate so much that obviously I feel like she could and will top this or do more interesting things, you know. But I feel like she's reached like this is definitive role for her right now. You
totally,
know?
I agree.
And I still feel like, you know, as we were like fan casting things, you know, with Sam Sanders and stuff, like I still feel like there are definitive roles that have not yet been written for Viola Davis, and I need the industry to give them to her. Like, where the fuck is her Tar?
Right. Yeah. Has Viola Davis played a genius yet? I'm ready for that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's weird because it's like if How to Get Away with Murder was like a prestige film instead of a series, that would be like that character, you know?
Correct. Yeah,
lesbian, alcoholic, you know, manipulative. Like, give her that on screen, you know? Give her Angela Lansbury and Manchurian Candidate, you know? Honestly, she would have done better than Meryl in that reboot.
Which I keep forgetting exists. The 2000s are a fucking wasteland, namely for Meryl Streep, up until Devil Wears Prada.
And let me tell you something. That is a dark spot in the Jonathan Demme universe.
Jonathan Demme is some up and down shit going on over there.
Did he do
God
the truth
the
about
man.
Charlie?
That I don't know. I mean, but yeah, they aren't all, Melvin and Howard in The Silence of the Lambs or whatever. The man who gave us Rachel getting married. No, I want to add about Cate Blanchett. People are like, well, Michelle Yeoh is due an Oscar, or Michelle Williams is due an Oscar. It's like, guys, you know what else is due? Kate's third. So I don't mean to sound like a bastard about it, but it's like she is Ingrid Bergman level, she is Meryl Streep level. So all three of these probabilities need to occur at some point.
Okay, she is a potential mother.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, she's Petra's father, if you've seen Tar. But that's one of the best scenes. She confronts a child in Tar. Anyway, you got to see it just for that alone.
It is. I need to see the film again, obviously. It's so mesmerizing. And it's also so interesting in the Todd Field filmography.
Which is now 3 deep.
Yeah. He takes a while. But when Todd Field drops a banger, it's a banger.
Yeah.
Okay?
All three of them are great. I mean, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a flawless filmography.
Yeah. Todd Field spit it. Todd Field wrote it. So...
In the Bedroom, Little Children, which I thought was never going to be topped, and now we have Tar. So,
but it's interesting that they're all sort of these, in a way, small human stories that are really just sort of blown up to an expansive, like, bird's eye view. You really get into a character's point of view, their lives. I mean, the cancel culture convo in this is so funny to me because I love just maybe the goofiest parts of the film are the cancel culture moments, like the people with the signs, running out,
cancel
I love
Lydia
you.
or whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, are the people filming her, they're so funny though.
And that part is like Notes on a Scandal, where she's crowded by people eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, and also specifically, she has this, she teaches at Juilliard at the beginning of the movie in one staggering scene, which is filmed like Birdman, where it's like 30 minutes in a row or something. And she has this talk with a student who says he can't get into Bach because he's, quote, a pangender person of color. And it's like, okay, at least be fair to people from that generation who might have objections to being taught, old white people are the best. No one would ever say, I can't be into Bach because I'm pangender. That makes no sense.
Did he say pangender?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was just calling himself a POC. But, I will say that scene is so interesting to me because you are on his side when he's talking about why he doesn't want to get into these old white men, but you're also weirdly on her side. And when she has her withering responses, and she's like, well, what about who calling what? Calling something what jazz, like Negro music, I forget who she says had said that quote, but it's it's so abrasive and you're in with her character and you laugh during it and you're sort of like, is she right? And then later in the film, when it's recontextualized to take her down, it's almost like the audience is indicted too.
Yes, right. Yeah, I think the audience is sort of put on blast a little bit, which is the strength of the movie.
Two things I will also say, aside from the Petra scene with the child, there is a scene towards the end, which is so funny and will clearly be memed.
Yes.
And it is so wild when it happens. I screamed in the audience.
Are we talking about the very end?
No, no. The very end of the film is also a gut punch.
Yeah, and a scream.
But I'm talking about the scene at the Met.
Of course, yes.
Right before the ending, before the epilogue, that scene, I screamed because you don't see it coming.
No, and also it's one of those things where you thought you knew what was going on in the scene at the beginning of the movie, and you don't realize what's actually happening. Yes, no, it's definitely the most. The movie is very restrained for the longest time, and then suddenly the restraint goes away.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you've seen Barbarian yet.
No, can you believe it? I haven't.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna ruin the twist for people, but it's still out. Go see it. I think it's a wonderful horror film, but it actually has so much in common with Tar because it's actually about, in a way, power and like canceling and like these things too. And it also just has searing moments of a woman descending into a basement. And the scene with the dog in Tar took me out. It was horrifying.
Yeah. There's lots of strange divergent scenes in Tar that you're like, do these all belong? But then looking back on it, I'm like, I love all those moments. I love how scrambled it was. So anyway, Go see Tar, come back. We'll continue talking about this movie for 5 months because, the Oscars and shit.
The race is heating up, okay?
Yes. And it's an actual race. I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah. It's a rat race.
Do not bring up that fucking film to me. Especially in this era of Kathy and a Jimmy resurgence. Do not do this to me.
You don't want to think about Kathy Bates and the squirrels?
Ugh, God. It's just not right.
I'm going to get Whoopi on here and ask her about that movie.
I bet she'd be like, I barely remember.
She'd be like, I'm closing the Zoom. I'm closing the Zoom, baby. I'm closing the Zoom. You need to get a damn job. Whoopi still giving us sound bites on The View all these years later. I love it.
No, she was never an intuitive choice for that show, and she is exactly right for that show.
And the sound bites are usually, just to say this as a side note, the sound bites are usually when someone has said something about her in the press. Yeah. She will come with the newspaper, with the magazine, with the clipping, with the link, and she will do a straight address, and she will say, "You are an anonymous bitch."
She does read her own press, which impresses me. Yeah. I would not be able to if I were a celebrity of that stature.
All right. When we're back, keep it.
And we're back with our favorite segment of the episode. It's Keep It. Louis, me, you're going first. I don't know why that cracked me up. My Keep It this week is to just a tweet I saw, which is Vogue Runway, which I guess is not Vogue, saying, thanks to Selena Gomez, the 80s cult classic Working Girl is returning to screens. Now, first of all, I just want to address the reboot or remake, etc. of Working Girl. The politics of that movie are pretty ensconced in 1988. So I'm both curious and pessimistic about what they can possibly do with it to make it harken back to the original. And Miss Carly Simon better be involved. That's all I know. Second of all, cult classic, bitch. Come on. Do you mean it's a movie about women? Is that it? Like it literally is a Best Picture nominated film from 1988, nominated for all sorts of Oscars, huge financial success, $100 million at the box office. I just feel like if you're going to write a headline about pop culture, it can't be someone who refers to everything as either iconic or a cult classic. That's just not how brains should work. It feels very simple to me, and it's just not a cult classic. It's a stone cold classic. It's on the AFI 100 lists of greatest comedies. It's like, is 9 to 5 a cult classic? Is It Happened One Night a cult classic? Just because you don't see it, the poster from it every day of your life the way you might see, like, I don't know, The 7-Year Itch or something, is it more of a cult classic? And I just think we need to talk about things not just in terms of sheer recognizability all the time.
Yeah, I would say that is sort of one of the downfalls, pratfalls, whatever word I want to use, Penelope pit stops of, like the writing and gearing things towards a younger audience online. It is, people are just able to write about things without any sort of knowledge about them.
Yeah, authority.
Or no authority.
Sensibility.
And you ignore basic just like common sense to appease like an audience or something. It's the idea of what a cult, the idea of even just writing that it's a cult classic. It's like, has this person ever even seen Working Girl?
Yeah, it sure sounds like they haven't. Yeah. And also it's just, right, like who is the person that would read that and think like, oh yeah, that cult classic Working Girl? Like, I don't even think younger people, like either you haven't heard of the movie or you do know what it is and you remember it's a big hit. So it's sort of like misses everybody.
Cult classic Mean Girls.
Yeah, I mean, wait for it. Yeah. Maybe the definition of cult classic needs to be redefined to me, because if it just means, a certain kind of person remembers that movie or remembers that thing, That's just pathetic, though. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate how small people's memories are. Do you get that sense from me? That's how I feel.
Yeah. That's why I only hang out with elephants.
That's right. Babar, that's your boo.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm always tying a string around my finger.
Yeah. Wow. Good reference.
I feel like cult classic used to mean it flopped at the box office.
Yes.
And it did well on either cable, VHS, or like a real cult classic, real cult classic is it has like midnight screenings.
Yes. No, when you think of course, Rocky Horror Picture Show, or I think something that this is almost a bad example because it's so ascended in pop culture that now I feel like everybody knows it, but Clue used to be a cult classic.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is my very Gen X style beef with the terming of cult classic. I'm nearly 36.
A millennial version, like Jennifer's Body, is a cult classic.
Jennifer's Body is a perfect example. Yes, that is a cult classic.
Trashed by critics, you know. I know people.
And
love
yeah,
it.
and like the critics were wrong, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so people like ended up discovering a lot about that movie. Ira, what is your keep it this week?
My keep it, and this is gonna hurt me to say this,
no.
but keep it to that Ladies album. I am tired of hearing it on repeat at parties at this point.
Ladies album?
You know what lady I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought literally you were talking about an album called Ladies that I was like, I don't know this thing.
That
Wait,
lady.
Go ahead.
Beyonce.
Oh, you're sick of it.
I'm sick of hearing it at every damn party I'm at on repeat. What happened to playlists?
That is true. Because it's a specific, shall we say, vibe.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, now it feels like you're just like somebody put on a movie you've seen 100 times.
Yeah, and I still love the album. I still think
Yes.
it's phenomenal, and like I want to listen to it in my own time. I don't need the vibe of every party isn't just put on Renaissance from start to finish anymore. It was for a minute.
Right.
But then the days have gone on and I haven't gotten a single visual that isn't tied to a blood diamond.
Yes. Oh no.
I mean, maybe I'm really just angry at these fucking Tiffany's ads.
Yeah, I mean, you really thought she would pull through. I mean, in a way, I respect the blue ballsing it. You know, she's like, "Oh, you think Rihanna's got that game on lock? Watch me do it."
Okay, at this point, it seems like Rihanna's going to drop new music before we get visuals for Renaissance.
That's a really confusing statement and hurtful.
We're hearing about a tour. We're hearing like Rihanna's probably going to be on the Wakanda Forever soundtrack. Like,
Yes.
What is going on here, Beyonce?
Ooh, I've got to tell you, if Rihanna gets into that Oscars game, this is going to be a good Oscars. I mean, it better be that good. I mean, all the stars, that's a nominated song. You know, I hope it's that level.
I mean, listen, with all the actresses nominated this year, with Harry Styles vying for a nomination, maybe a Golden Globe.
I'm gonna say,
but
you may. I'll see you at the Saturns, faggot. Okay, yeah.
But I'm thinking about Lady Gaga's press tour when she was like Oscar nominated for at least for song, right? Mm-hmm. But that you're getting, like Lady Gaga levels of camp, and she's overselling it and giving you like giving the gays everything they want.
Yeah,
but
right.
there will be a different quality to the proceedings if Rihanna is nominated for an Oscar for song, because I'm just thinking, how do you miss that red carpet? How are you not panning to Rihanna in the audience at the Oscars every chance you get? Because
Totally.
You know what I miss? I miss Rihanna and her shady reactions at like the VMAs and other award shows,
which used to be standard. Yeah. No, also, by the way, it would just be. You mentioned Lady Gaga, who I worked the red carpet at that Oscars, and when she arrived, it was that Beatlemania type reaction. Like people were waiting specifically for that moment for her to arrive at the Oscars. But also just that kind of Oscars moment you don't get anymore, where like Michael Jackson's there with Madonna.
Yeah.
Like I am ready. Like when a pop star intersects with the Oscars, there is something so explosive and unmissable about it. And obviously after last year's Oscars, there were things about it you couldn't miss even afterwards. But this is unmissable in a new and kind of cool way.
What's crazy is that Ezra Miller, they're probably going to break into the Oscars and steal all the statues. So
I would love a caper at the Oscars. Yeah,
Ocean's
a Harlequin
Miller.
novel about the perks of being a et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
Well, it's funny that I remember we critiqued the fact that Ocean's 8 was about like, oh, here are these women robbing something. So of course it has to be jewelry from the Met Gala, right?
Yeah.
But I would not complain if there was a gay Ocean's 8 and they were stealing something from like the Oscars. They're stealing Cate Blanchett.
Oh my God! And then she can do her famous gay wrist meme during it, pointedly and meanly.
She loves us truly.
Right? Yeah. No. She acknowledges us with a courtly clap and accepts us the way we are, and knows we are inferior to her. That's nice.
You know what? I'm like, and I'm thinking about. It probably won't be her, but I was thinking. I saw the Nicole Kidman ad before Tar, because I saw it at AMC Lincoln Square, and I'm wondering if I've been thinking about the sequel that's coming to the ad, and I'm like, I hope it's not campy and like makes fun of the first one. I hope it plays it straight, but I'm also hoping that someone else is in it with Nicole Kidman, someone unexpected,
somebody else in the theater.
Like she's going to get popcorn or something now, but like a friend is with her. But who's the friend?
Oh,
Kate, Viola, Taraji. Like I don't know.
I would love to keep it Australian.
Naomi's working concessions.
Okay, I mean, guys, it's a good pitch. I kind of think it should be.
And she won't have to leave her day job to shoot it.
It should also be this cruel. It shouldn't be campy, but it should be cruel to Naomi Watts. How many gay text chats have like disparaging jokes about Naomi Watts, who, by the way, is a fine and great actress?
She's like just the Danny Minogue of the acting world. So.
No, right. It's just the proximity to Nicole, who is her best friend. Yes.
Yeah. We're not saying put the needle on it, and I begin to wonder, aren't iconic, but are they light years?
No. Right. And also, those are the only two. So, yeah. So it's Mulholland Drive and The Impossible, and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll
I
throw
fucking
the ring
hate 21
in there.
grams. Oh, okay. The Ring 2.
You thought I was going to bring up liking 21 grams?
I know.
I can't. I don't even like that movie. Okay.
Yeah. Not good.
It wishes it were Blow.
Right.
And I can't believe I like Blow, a film that I will never watch again now, because the scarecrow from the Haunted Hayride is the star of it. But
you at least get Catherine in that. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's our show this week. I hope we delivered enough for y'all have been listening to us for 250 episodes. That is really lovely. I do want to be earnest right now. I had a lot of people who were just excited to see me at BravoCon, but also people who were excited to tell me stories about how they went through like really sad moments in their life over the past 5 years, and listening to us sort of helped them through it. I mean, we heard a lot about that during lockdown, but other moments in their lives that people just shared with me briefly. It's nice that this show means a lot to so many people.
And it's such a gag because we're just sitting here talking. So thank you so much for making it seem even remotely rad. Just two, queens babbling. So much, much, much appreciated. And it's such a blast. So thank you for joining us. And again, if we're wrong, tell us. Love it.
Yeah. The number on the screen, call it.
Yeah, right. Call me now for your free reading. But read me. That's my Miss Cleo throughout. Shout out.